What's up, everyone? AJ Legend back here with another review, and this time we're taking a look at Loki, the 2021 Disney Plus series. Let's waste no time. Let's get right into this. This is going to be a long review, but I'm going to do my best to try and make this thing as not as long as possible. All right. Basic overall premise of the Loki show is this. It follows the events of Avengers Endgame when Loki of 2012 picks up the Tesseract and gets transported away to the multitude of multiverses, whatever. All right, bare bones thoughts out of the way first. From a production value standpoint, this is a good looking show. I like the different locations. I like the look of these different locations. I like the look of the Time Variance Authority. It has this very, it has like a DMV type of quality and look to it. It's like a mix of DMV and CIA. The way the TVA looks, I kind of like that. It's very unique. They deal with monitoring timelines and timeline branches and stuff like that. So I like that concept. The performances of this show, most of the part are actually really good. Tom Hiddleston, even though I am become completely bored with the character of Loki, he still has that charm. He still has that charisma, and you can tell he really enjoys playing this character. His performance in this show is no different. The characterization I have a problem with, but Hiddleston's performance I got zero problem with. He's fine. Owen Wilson as Mobius, who is the co-lead of the show. It's Owen Wilson. How can you hate Owen Wilson? I like him in the show. I thought he was funny. I don't like some of the things that they have his character that they do with his character. There are times where I thought his character's going to have some really cool moments, and then they just undercut it with stupidity. So it wasn't really a huge fan with that. But I'll get to that stuff when I get to it. And then you have the actress who played Sylvie. Not a huge fan of this character whatsoever, but the actress is okay. And the other actors that appear throughout this show are also, for the most part, really, they're good. The performances of the show are fine. The production values in the show are cool and creative. I like the look of a lot of these multiple places that Loki and his variant travel throughout the course of the show. The locations have a unique look to it. And the show itself just has a unique feel to it. I don't think it even scratched the surface of its potential, but we're going to start to get to that right now. All right. So without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. Episode 1 starts off with 2012 Loki stealing the Tesseract, as I mentioned before. He creates a branch timeline, and he ends up in the Gobi Desert. He quickly is arrested by the TVA. All right. So he's taken to their HQ, and he can't use his magic. So basically, when you're in the TVA, everything is suspended. No, magic does not work here. The TVA tries to present itself as Switzerland in a way, a very neutral playing ground where everything is just hampered and dampered. Then this TV mascot of the TV named Miss Minutes explains the history of TVA. Multiversal war between timelines ended by the Timekeepers. The Timekeepers established a singular timeline to prevent war. The Keepers created the TVA. The employees maintain what is known as the sacred timeline, which is the mainline timeline. All right. The TVA does this by resetting branch timelines caused by a variance, and they do this by pruning these variants, and they end up dying pretty much. So yeah, that's that. Loki then stands trial for the crimes he's committed against the sacred timeline, pretty much from what he did in the first Thor movie all the way to the present time. He stands trial. He's overseen by Ravonna Renslayer, who is a judge. Wasn't really a humongous fan of the Renslayer character. I thought the actress had no commanding presence. Every time she looks like she's trying to be, every time she tries to act authoritarian, it's like a middle school principal disciplining a 5-year-old. She has no on-screen presence whatsoever. She's number one. She looks skinnier than a twig. You can push her, and she'll probably fall out. She'll probably fall down a flight of stairs. I digress. Loki blames the Avengers for this, but is dismissed. Then Renslayer explains that the Avengers' actions followed the sacred timeline, while Loki's didn't. He's found guilty until Mobius, played by Owen Wilson, intervenes, thinking he can be of use. Loki and Mobius talk about Loki's past misdeeds and revisit certain moments that took place in the MCU. Uh, Loki attempts to escape, but discovers that the TVA has numerous Infinity Stones. However, they don't work at TVA HQ. I got a real problem with this. I'll touch on that momentarily once I'm done with my episode 1 summarization. Uh, Loki goes back to the Time Theater, which is where Mobius was interrogating him. He views the rest of his life with Thor, Odin, plus his death by Thanos. Loki realizes he cannot return to his timeline, but agrees to help TVA hunt the killer of several officers who's been stealing the tech of the TVA. Mobius then reveals that the fugitive is another Loki variant. All right, so I'll say this: episode 1 dumps a lot of exposition on you, and it also does a lot of retconning to the greater MCU. Number 1, this show is basically following Loki post the first Avengers movie, and he has not gone through his entire character arc yet. But this show just basically does a Cliff Notes version, and we get Loki back to where he was at the end of Infinity War, which begs me the question: why did we kill him off in Infinity War in the first place if we're just gonna bring him back to where he was just to do this stupid show? That's a big gripe I have with this thing. If you're gonna expand upon 2012 Loki, at least make it somewhat more interesting. And instead of having Loki go through the same character arc again just to go back to where he was, only we're going to do it a Cliff Notes version of it, at least expand upon more evil Loki and have Loki be very deceivious and mischievous, traveling through timelines and causing chaos, instead of just reverting back to where he was originally before he was killed by Thanos. I thought that was stupid and dumb, and begs the question: why did we just have him survive being killed by Thanos? It's so dumb, it's so stupid, and it does nothing interesting with the Loki character at all. You pretty much undercut everything you did from the first Thor movie to Infinity War to this show, which starts off with 2012 Loki, and then you bring him back to where he was already. It's a complete waste of time, and it's stupid. Oh yeah, this show's explanation on the Infinity Stones and how they have no power in the TVA. What a way to just take the Infinity Saga and take a giant dump all over that. The Avengers died trying to collect the Infinity Stones to undo what Thanos did. So you're telling me that all they had to do was find a way to go to TVA and they could have won? By sucking out the power of the Infinity Stones, they lose the special quality. And not only that, you just took a giant load over Tony's sacrifice. Because now, this stupid show is pretty much telling us, oh, if Tony would have gone to TVA, he would have lived. What a way to piss on his legacy. Episode 1, this is episode 1, and it already did things that I absolutely can't stand and hate. Yeah, those are really my two big takeaways from episode 1. The retconning of Loki's character, just to bring him back to where he was already, and pretty much taking the Infinity Stones and turning them into glorified paperweights with no power, pretty much undoing the entire Infinity Saga. You pretty much undid 10 years worth of storytelling and movies just to do a stupid joke with the most powerful objects in the MCU. This show's already off to a banging start. Alright, let's get to episode 2. So, episode 2 is this. Loki joins a TVA mission in 1985 Wisconsin to find a Loki variant. The show opens up with, I need a hero, and this really goofy fight scene taking place with Minutemen and this variant Loki. And I thought the scene was kind of boring, to be honest with you. Not really interesting at all. They find out that Hunter C-20, who was possessed by this Loki variant, has been kidnapped. However, Loki derails the mission by stalling and attempting to bargain his way to meet the Timekeepers. So Loki wants to meet the Timekeepers who are guarding the sacred timeline. He also requests that his variant won't be killed. We'll find that more out later. Mobius realizes Loki is lying about a variant being close. TVA resets a branch timeline, which is the Wisconsin timeline. Loki, which is pretty much doing Loki stuff. The first half of episode 2, nothing remotely interesting happened whatsoever. It was just flat out boring. Back at TVA HQ, Renslayer objects to Loki's help, but Morbius convinces her to give him a chance. Pretty much from episode 1, this show was teasing something going on between Renslayer and Mobius, and they never fully touch upon it at all. It's kind of like Blue Balls. Like, I don't know if Renslayer and Mobius have a close friendship, if they had a romance, if they like each other, don't like each other. Like, what's going on with these two? I can't get a grasp on the relationship with Renslayer and Mobius, because there are certain times where the scene is being played as if they have romantic connection, and then it's being played for something else entirely. Like, I can't get a grasp on this crap. Loki searches TVA files, learning of Ragnarok, which is what we know what happened with Ragnarok. He theorizes that the variant is hiding near apocalyptic events where they can go unnoticed by the TVA. Pretty much, the apocalyptic events are things that are meant to happen regardless of anything else, and because of that, the TVA has no way to prevent these certain cataclysmic events from happening. Okay. Loki and Morbius travel to Pompeii, where Loki tries to test the theory, and he's proven true. Whatever. This entire scene is actually really goofy, by the way. Loki is all of a sudden speaking ancient Italian, yet there are other languages that he just doesn't understand. The show is very sloppy in how it presents Loki. Oh my god, what else? So, using a clue from an Aixen M province, which is something that Mobius was doing in the first episode, one of the variants attacks. Loki and Mobius deduce that the variant is hiding during a hurricane in 2050 Alabama. Okay. In Superstar Roxcart's hurricane shelter, Loki, Morbius, and TVA agents are ambushed by the variant. It uses enchantment to possess Hunter B-15 and other locals, and this goes into like a cat and mouse fight scene between Loki and his variant, which is nothing spectacular. It's kind of dull and boring, to be honest with you. Loki engages the variant while other agents find a distressed C-20 who in her state of mind, gave away the location of the Timekeepers. The variant then reveals herself to be a female, and she rejects Loki's offer to overthrow the Timekeepers together. She then activates several time reset charges across the sacred timeline. The two Lokis then disappear together. Yeah, the only thing of note that happens in episode 2 is the revelation of the female Loki and her having the line that defined the entire series, "This is not about you." Basically stating that this show, it was never going to be about Loki. It was going to be about Sylvie. And as the series progresses, Loki's a backup dancer in his own show, while Sylvie takes away all his shine. And she's the most uninteresting character in the entire show, to be honest with you. This show should have been just Loki and Morbius traveling through the timeline, going through on these wacky, just over-the-top adventures. Instead, it divulges into something else, which is the least interesting thing. All right, let's get to episode 3. So before Loki and the TVA arrive in 2050, Sylvie, the female Loki, projects emulated memory into Hunter C-20 to collect info on the Timekeeper's location. We get this in a scene where C-20 as a human form is talking to Sylvie in her human form, and they have a conversation. It's whatever. Sylvie and Loki arrive at the TVA. She attempts to visit the Timekeepers while he tries to stop her. However, Renslayer appears and attacks them both. Loki uses a tempad to teleport himself and Sylvie. The duo arrive in 2070 Lamentis 1, a moon crushed by a planet. I overall like the look of Lamentis 1. It has this very apocalyptic feel and look to it. And it's a planet, and it's a moon where planets falling, where that's being crushed by a planet. So it's going to have like this post-apocalyptic, time is running out feel. So I like the overall look of Lamentis 1. They can't escape due to the tempad having no power. Sylvie's the only one who knows how to charge it up. They agreed to join forces because of that. Loki has magically hid the tempad, so that way Sylvie doesn't kill him to take it for herself. They travel on a train bound for an arc to evacuate to go on a spaceship. They want to use this ship to charge the tempad. During this, Loki and Sylvie bond and talk about stuff, very uninteresting stuff. Basically, this is the scene where Loki admits that he's been with men and women, but it's at least it's done in a throwaway line where if you blink, you miss it. But the conversation between these two is kind of dull, kind of boring, kind of forgettable. I had a hard time trying to pay attention, to be honest with you. I just really had a hard time paying attention. Like I went into this show not really caring about it to begin with because I'm over Loki. So trying to keep my attention span for this thing was really really hard. Uh, Loki gets drunk, draws attention to himself, leading guards to attack them. They get thrown off the train, and the TemPad gets broken. The two travel on foot and hope to find an arc to escape. During this journey, Sylvie reveals that TVA employees are all variants. Loki realizes that TVA are unaware since he was told timekeepers created them. Loki and Sylvie fight guards while avoiding a meteor shower. However, it destroys the arc, leaving them stranded. The only takeaways from episode 3 are that Sylvie reveals the truth about the TVA, Loki starts to question the TVA, and that's pretty much it. That's really pretty much it. Like this episode didn't really do much to get. This episode felt like filler with only 2 minutes of expansion of a story. All right, episode 4 starts with a flashback. Renslayer arrests a young Sylvie for her crimes. We never find out what these crimes really were, and if we did, I missed it. She erases her from her timeline and from existence. Sylvie steals her TemPad and escapes anyway. Morbius asks to see Hunter C20. Renslayer claims she died from her nervous breakdown. Sylvie and Loki form a romantic connection while stranded on Lamentus 1. Loki's pretty much falling in love with himself. Even though it's a female version of himself, it's still really weird. I mean, yeah, it plays into Loki's narcissistic nature and pretty much cements the fact that the only person Loki will ever love is himself. But it's just weird. It's just weird actually seeing it play out with another physical body, even though it's his female counterpart. It's still strange. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's just strange. I'm not gonna dwell too much on it. I could care less. Uh, Loki works better without a love interest, to be honest. Uh, blah 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 blah. Nervous breakdown. This creates a unique branched timeline called a Nexus event, which is perpendicular to the sacred timeline. This alerts TVA, and they rescue and arrest the pair. Loki is in a time loop, being attacked. Loki is then sent to a time loop as punishment, where he's constantly attacked by Lady Sif. We bring back Jamie Alexander as Lady Sif, and she's only there to be a joke. She's just there to knee Loki in the balls, punch him in the face, and pretty much Loki confirms that he's a worthless bum. What a waste. What a waste of Jamie Alexander's talents, and the joke stopped being funny after the first time. And it goes on way too long, and it goes on way too long, and it stops being funny really, really quick. Mobius then pulls Loki out of the loop to interrogate him on the Nexus event that occurred, which is Loki and Sylvie falling in love, which is starting to create really bad branches. He then mocks Loki's narcissism and his budding romance. Pretty much Mobius is saying it's no secret that no wonder why you felt you liked this girl. She's just like you, because she is you. That's pretty much what the conversation is about. Loki reveals that TVA employees are time variants. Mobius sends him back into a time loop. A distraught Hunter B-15 brings Sylvie to 2050 Alabama and asks to see memories of her past. Morbius frees Loki. They're confronted by Renslayer and TVA troopers. Morbius acknowledges his betrayal and variant status, which leads to him being pruned, which means it's this show's version of pretty much, we think you're being killed, but you're not really being killed. You're just being sent to a disposable wasteland, which is what we see in episode 5 when I get to it momentarily. Renslayer takes Loki and Sylvie to the Timekeepers. Sylvie asks Renslayer why she was arrested. However, Renslayer can't remember, and we never find out why, which begs the question, what's the point of Sylvie? She basically has no backstory. Timekeepers order Loki and Sylvie to be deleted. B-15 appears and frees the pair. Loki and Sylvie team up, defeat Renslayer and the Timekeeper guards. Sylvie beheads a Timekeeper. She learns that they're androids. Loki attempts to tell Sylvie about his feelings, but is then pruned. Angered, Sylvie overpowers Renslayer and demands the truth about the TVA. Loki Then in the mid-credit scene, Loki awakens in another dimension where he meets four other Loki variants. They ask Loki to join them for his survival. Okay, episode 4 does more than episode 3, but it also doesn't really do much, to be honest with you. The big takeaways from episode 4 is this. We find out that the timekeepers are androids. So who's the real puppet master of this show if it ain't the timekeepers? Mobius gets pruned. Loki gets pruned. Loki wakes up in a wasteland surrounded by four other Lokis. So like pretty much episode 4 sets up a very interesting episode 5. And I think episode 5 is actually the best out of the entire show, but I'll get to that when I get to that momentarily. But other than that, episode 4 doesn't really have a whole lot of anything going on. It's just more people talking with some action sequences peppered out. We still don't know anything about Sylvie that's concrete. We don't know what the motivation. We don't really know what Sylvie. We don't know Sylvie's backstory. We don't know much about her. We don't know why she's considered to be superior than Loki. We don't know anything about Sylvie. I feel like I never learned anything about this character. Not only that, I feel like I don't know anything about the character of Renslayer. What makes her so good that she made her a judge? So far she's inadequate at her job. To be honest with you, she ain't good at being a judge. She kind of sucks. All right. Not only that, Renslayer had one job: protect the timekeepers, and she failed. She sucks. All right. Episode 5. Renslayer tells Sylvie she don't know who created the TVA. She says Loki was sent to the Void, a dimension at the end of time, which is basically a wasteland. They deduce that the TVA's creator is hiding within the timeline beyond the Void. So the plot starts to thicken now. Episode 5 is where the show starts to finally get somewhat interesting. Miss Minutes, the TVA mascot, and Renslayer stall for time while Sylvie's doing stuff. And they're only doing this so that Minutemen can arrive and attack and apprehend Sylvie. Facing capture, Sylvie prunes herself and she ends up going to the Void. Renslayer interrogates and imprisons B-15. She instructs Miss Minutes to help find the TVA creator. Loki learns from it. Then we go to Loki and his 4 variants, which are Alligator Loki, Boastful Loki, Classic Loki, and Kid Loki. That Alliath, which is this massive cloud creature, hunts and kills all life in the Void. So pretty much the 5 of them have to team up in order to survive. This is where the show could have gotten interesting and where it looks like it was going to get interesting. I like the whole idea of Loki teaming up with these 4 variants. Alligator Loki, Boastful Loki, Classic Loki, and Kid Loki. Classic Loki by Richard E. Grant. He is the highlight of this entire show. He's the highlight of episode 5. I actually like Classic Loki's backstory. We find out that Classic Loki faked his death with Thanos, and then he kind of just drifted off and disappeared and cut ties with everyone and was pretty much alone for all of his life. And I like that. I like how that, pretty much Classic Loki turned himself into a broken man, into a loner, somebody who is just out, somebody who cut ties with all the people in his life. And I like how that changed him in a way. And now that he's joined up with these other variants, it's kind of like they have to stick together now for survival. I like the whole idea of Kid Loki being the ruler of this domain, and I like the whole idea of Kid Loki being in charge of this domain. I would prefer it if it was Classic Loki in charge, but whatever. At least Kid Loki never comes across as overly annoying to me. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but well, I don't mind Kid Loki, and I kind of like the dark humor of him being the one of Kid Loki killing his brother Thor, which is what caused his Nexus event. So I thought that was pretty humorous. During all of that, Sylvie arrives in the Void and briefly enchants Alliath, and this is where she starts to see fragments and images of this big citadel hiding within the Void itself. And this of course plays a role at the end of the episode and into the episode 6. Before anything more can happen, she's rescued by Morbius, who, as I mentioned, was pruned, but he's really alive because the Void is just basically a wasteland for all the prunes, for all those who are pruned. We go back to the 5 Lokis, and the boastful Loki betrays the other Lokis to President Loki because both Loki wants power. So we get this President Loki character, and this is where the show had some potential. This is where the show took something that could have been very, very interesting, and you could have gotten some good stuff out of it, and it does absolutely nothing with it. We could have gotten something interesting of Kid Loki and President Loki struggle for power as to who really have domain over the void, and President Loki is just there to be a joke. He gets his hand bitten off, a big fight ensues, and nothing of note really happens. What a waste, what a waste. What a waste. All the Lokis end up betraying each other in a goofy fight that lasts for like 3.3 seconds, because the other ones, they just escape. Eventually, the Lokis, which are Classic and Kid, along with real Loki, find Sylvie and Mobius. Mobius uses a stolen tempad to return to TVA. He wants to reveal the truth about the organization to the employees, about how they're all just variants. Loki and Sylvie then continue their budding romance, with both of them sharing a little blanket and cuddling with one another. It's a cheesy scene, didn't need to be there. Kind of just slows this episode down for the eventual climax. Now the climax begins. Loki attempts to distract Elias so Sylvie can enchant it, but she fails. Then Classic Loki does probably the most coolest thing in the whole show, where he creates a life-size version of Asgard to distract Elias, and in turn he saves Sylvie and Loki, but sacrifices his life. This is what I was talking about, where Classic Loki was the shine of this episode. Richard E. Grant's performance in this episode was really cool, and his biggest contribution to this episode is basically him saving our heroes and him pretty much being the savior and him pretty much just stealing the show. Like, he stole the show. Richard E. Grant as Classic Loki was actually really cool, and I wouldn't mind a show that's centered around Classic Loki, to be honest with you. He was the most interesting character out of this entire show and out of this entire episode. He had what would go down as one of the coolest moments, not only in this show, but probably in the MCU, by recreating Asgard to save everyone. So yeah, I got nothing but positive things to say about Classic Loki. Played by a very good and underrated actor, and had a scene-stealing moment. So after all that goes down, Loki and Sylvie are able to enchant Elias, revealing the citadel that Sylvie saw in her visions beyond the void. All right, now we're down to episode 6, and this is where the show starts to go off the rails for me. The season finale. So Loki and Sylvie enter the citadel. They're greeted by Miss Minutes. Minutes relays an offer from her master, He Who Remains, to return them to the sacred timeline while offering Loki sovereignty and offering Sylvie happiness. The duo reject the offer. Okay. At TVA HQ, Renslayer receives info sent by He Who Remains via Miss Minutes. Mobius confronts Renslayer and both accuse each other of betrayal. She leaves in search of free will after they have like a 2-second fight where we think that Mobius and Renslayer are gonna like throw down fists, but Renslayer kicks him and then she leaves. What a way to make Mobius look like an utter fucking idiot. And like a weakling. The men in this show are treated like complete chumps. Loki doesn't do anything. He's outshined by Classic Loki. Majority of the show, he's outshined by Sylvie. So yeah, Loki. This show is supposed to center around Hiddleston's Loki, but he doesn't do anything of note. To be honest with you, he does nothing of interest. All right. Then we go to 2018 Fremont, Ohio, where B-15 is being pursued by Minutemen. She reveals a variant of Renslayer, who is a school vice principal, to prove that the TVA personnel are all variants. We go back to the Citadel. He Who Remains greets Loki and Sylvie. He Who Remains is played by Jonathan Majors, who, if you've been keeping track with the MCU, Jonathan Majors is going to be playing a role in Ant-Man and Wasp and the greater MCU, as he's going to be known as Kang the Conqueror, which is somebody who travels the multiverse. This is one of Kang's many variants, He Who Remains. Sylvie and Loki are surprised that he's just a normal guy. No, he uses a tempad and he avoids Sylvie's attacks. He Who Remains can anticipate all actions because he's foreseen the past, present, and the future, and he guided Loki to and Sylvie to see him specifically. He reveals that he created the TVA after several variants of himself discovered alternate universes and contacted one another in the 31st century. Several of these variants tried to conquer other universes, leading to a multiversal war. Because this happened, He Who Remains harnessed the creature of Alioth to end it all. He then isolated his own timeline and created the TVA to prevent these further branches in the timeline. So He Who Remains created everything. He offers them a choice to either kill him, which will end the singular timeline and risk another multiversal war sparked by his many variants, or they can succeed him, leading the TVA and managing the proper timeline. The timeline starts to diverge. He Who Remains can no longer see the future. Sylvie tries to kill him. Loki fights her, fearing that He Who Remains might be right all along. They share a kiss. Loki kisses himself because he's in love with himself. Sylvie uses the TemPad to send Loki back to TVA HQ. Sylvie kills a surrendering He Who Remains, unleashing a multiverse with the timelines that can't be pruned. Loki tries to warn B-15 and Mobius about He Who Remains, his many variants. However, they don't recognize him. He then discovers a statue of one of the variants, replacing the Timekeepers. That's pretty much how the season ends. Sylvie is the cause of all the nonsense that's going to be taking place in the greater MCU. Because this idiot got in her feelings, she now unleashed chaos upon the multiverse, and now King the Conqueror is going to come destroy everything else. Sylvie as a character is horrible. She sucks. Jonathan Majors' performance as He Who Remains, I like the whole idea of this of the whole Wizard of Oz, references, and I like the whole build up to his eventual revelation. It's very Wizard of Oz. But when you get to who's the man behind the curtain, it's just very weird. His performance is really weird. I don't know what Jonathan Majors was trying to do with this character. One instance, he's acting serious. Another instance, he's acting over the top and goofy. And then there's another instance where he looks like he's just flat out just blitzed out of his mind and is in no gives a fucks mode. Jonathan Majors' performance, I know critics praise it as being a highlight of this episode. I was confounded by it. I did not think his performance really was all that good. It was way too over the top and goofy. And yeah, if this is going to be the villain of Phase 4, this is going to be a long phase. I mean, it's already off to a rocky start. Now it's just going to get even more rockier. Hopefully, when Majors comes back as Kang, he'll be more and more serious and more of a threat, a la Thanos. But yeah, the one thing that episode 6 did was confirm that Sylvie's an idiot. She's going to start all the chaos that's going to be happening because she's a dumbass. And Loki is just a backup bitch in his own show. So, yeah. Those are my overall thoughts on the Loki Disney Plus TV show. I'm just going to give this show a 5 out of 10. It's on the same level as WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. Unlike those two shows, which irritated me and pissed me off, Loki, I was just not interested in this show to begin with. I didn't want to see a Loki show. And after seeing what I saw with this on a second viewing, my thoughts on it have not really changed. It has some really cool moments. I think this show would have been better if Loki and Morbius were co-leads and were the ones traveling the multiverse. And then we bring in Loki's other variants like Boastful, Classic, Alligator, and Kid earlier on. I think this show would have been much, much better for what it was. Instead, this is called The Sylvie Show with Loki as a supporting player. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for the Loki Disney Plus TV show. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.